Next thing we're going to talk about with TeamCity is how to set up a C# build configuration. As we've said previously, as your automation matures, you're going to want to be able to set up a CI pipeline for your build or your project. So that way you can build your tests and deploy them to the environments. First thing we do is inside of our project within TeamCity, we will select create build configuration. That will open up the create build configuration screen. From a repository URL tab, we're going to enter our parent project. So that's the project that this configuration is going to fall under when you go into TeamCity. So we're going to use QA Underground for that. And then on the next screen, we're going to actually enter our repository URL. So this is the URL that we're using from, be it from GitHub or Bitbucket or whatnot. Next, we're going to enter our authentication or our credentials. So we're going to enter our username and our password. If you're within a company, you may have an admin account that you would enter for this scenario, or most likely an admin account or a tester account. Once we're done with that, we're going to hit the proceed button. And once that proceed button has been selected, it's actually going to validate that it can access the repository URL. So we should get a message that says the connection to the VCS repository has been verified. That just means that the URL and the credentials that you provided are correct. Next, we will add our build configuration name. So this is the name of the configuration that'll show up in TeamCity underneath the project that we've entered. For this scenario, I'm going to enter QA Underground _ build. Next, we will hit the proceed button. Once we hit the proceed button, we'll actually be opened up to our edit configuration screen. On the left, there'll be a bunch of different options, but the main one that we care about is the build steps option. So go ahead and select build steps. On the next screen, we're going to hit add build step. And we're going to start by, basically, we're going to be adding 3 steps to our C# build scenario, build configuration, sorry. And to do that, we're going to add our initial step, which is add build step button. As runner type, we're going to actually select our NuGet installer so we can restore and grab our NuGet packages. On the new build setup, we're actually going to enter our step name. So I'm just going to call this NuGet install. Next, we need our path to our solution file. So basically, this is just selecting the solution file within our directory. You can either do that by manually entering it or selecting the tree icon on the right and then selecting the solution that you want to build. Once we're done with that, we'll just simply hit save to save our build step. And with that, we've created our initial build step, which is our NuGet installer. Next, we're going to create another build step, and that build step will be to build our solution. So we'll select, again, add build step. This time for runner type, we'll do .NET. First thing we'll do is name our step. So we'll call this build solution, since that is what we are doing. Next, we will select the projects within the directory that we want to build. Mine just happens to be called QA Underground, but it could be called whatever your project that you're trying to build is called. Finally, for configuration, we'll set it to debug. Then we'll simply hit save, and that will be done with our second build step. Now we're going to add our third and final step to the build process, and that will be to build our VS tests. So this is actually to run our tests, right? Previous steps have been to restore our NuGet packages, to build our solution, so that way we have a project to run our tests from. Now we're going to add that final step, which is to build our VS tests. On the runner type, select .NET. For the step name for this, we're going to simply call it build vs tests. So it's simple to understand what we are doing. Next, we're going to add a command. So we're going to say the type of command we're going to be sending is for vs test. And we're going to include some of our test assemblies. So this is why we build our process in the step before. So that way we have, we can include some of our test assemblies. So we need our DLL file for our project, and we're going to point to our solution file as well. Again, you can manually enter these into test assemblies text field here, or select the tree to be able to add that. For framework, I'm actually using .NET 4.7.2. You may be using a different framework, so that may be targeted differently. You can decide by using the magic wand and finding it, or whatever target framework you're using, that's where you would enter that. If you're using a run settings file, so if you're doing environment specific settings, this is where you would actually target which environment you're hitting. So if you have build configurations and multiple different environments, so a QA, a staging, a production, or a dev, you can create separate run setting files and then simply target each of those setting files from in here, depending on what configuration and what environment you want to hit. For this scenario, we're going to hit the QA environment. So I have a QA environment.run settings file that I'm trying to target. And then finally, our command line parameters. So this is if you want to specifically target a specific category within your tests. This is mainly for, if you want to have a suite of regression tests and a suite of smoke tests and a suite of specific, validation categories, you can target specific test case filter categories within the command line parameters. And that's simply what I'm doing here. You don't have to do this. You can leave this empty and it will run all the tests that are in the suite. But if you want to be a little bit more specific and a little bit more targeted, that's when you would that's when you would enter a smoke test category. And there's a multitude of different command line parameters that you can add here, but this is just a scenario. And then finally, we have select the save button. And then finally, we just simply select the save button, and that will save our third and final build step. After that, we are done. Everything we've done is completed, and we no longer have to do any additional stuff. So now we have a basic skeleton of creating a C# build configuration within TeamCity. You can modify this or enhance it any way you want, add additional build steps that, for example, could send alerts or emails for reporting or artifacting. Say you have a extent report that is in your artifacts. This is where you could add additional steps to be able to send that report after your build is completed, or reset the agent, etc.